Yeah! In this JPGivin'er analysis, I'll be analyzing Awoken's perspective from a lounge event. To be honest, there were a lot of unlucky moments here, so it was a tiny bit more difficult to make some general points without going over little things, because when improving, you don't want to focus that much on the little things. Either way, I hope you get something out of this video, so without further ado, let's start Givin'er, bud. Starting things off, we got Bone Dry Dunes. I don't think Awoken made that many mistakes altogether. There's just a couple things he could work on, and as always, when I say you, I'm most likely referring to Awoken. Alright, this is a very small thing, but because you were in a bit of an awkward spot by gliding like this on lap 2, here's what you should do instead. Instead of holding both back and right, just hold right after mini turboing after the glider. You'll position yourself toward the landing zone much more efficiently, and compared to lap 2, you'll save time as well. But honestly, and I did mention this in a prior analysis, taking the top path and chaining one shroom into the set or the set prior would have been the play. Let me show you what I mean. By holding onto your two shrooms, then using one of them to take the shortcut, you basically force yourself to yield to the triple items that surrounded you. That in itself wasn't a bad play, but I think you could have increased your odds of being in a better long-term position by taking the top path, chaining your shroom into the set, then using your next shroom to take the shortcut. It's a little risky, especially considering you could pull an item that won't help you that much, but I think taking risks early on in the race isn't a bad thing, because if you get screwed for it right away, you can just bag and catch up later. But yeah, my point here is that taking the top path opens the doors to items that could really help you out, or screw you over. It's a risk since after the shortcut, you will have used both of your shrooms, but it could help you out a lot, since you could have put yourself in a much better position by taking the shortcut. I could tell by how you approached the second set that you weren't certain if you could nail a double box or not. Well, I'll tell you what, the wide double set is always a great option and could have ensured you receive at least one good item, because in some cases, you don't get triple shrooms from the single box. By taking the wide doubles, not only will you basically be guaranteed 2 items, as long as you don't miss of course, but you'll also increase the gap between you and everyone in front of you, further ensuring at least one solid item like triple shrooms. Plus, you get more space, which is always a good thing in this game. But overall, my point here is that you shouldn't feel worried about taking the wide doubles in a situation where you won't get punished for it, because in most cases, you'd gain more for it than driving tight, even if you got the tight doubles. Now, don't get me wrong, activating your start to get away from the greens was the play if you wanted no chance at getting greens. But I think it's important to consider the consequences of doing so, which would have been a factor in what spot you'd finish in had you not pulled a shroom at the last set. You weren't that close to the guy, so you very easily could have stuck to the right side of the anti-gravity section, since the left side is easier to get backed on, chain your shrooms into the last set, and activate your star shortly after, further guaranteeing a solid spot. It was a pretty close finish, and had you pulled an item like triple greens instead of a shroom, you very well could have finished in a really bad spot. I don't blame you for wanting to stay safe in the moment, I really don't, but try to think of ways you can hold items like a star moving forward, since that could have been your ticket to finishing in a top 6 spot with ease. You definitely put it all on the line by relying on the last set, so just keep that in mind in sticky situations moving forward. Next up is Ribbon Road. Not much happened worth mentioning for the first lap and for a bit of lap 2, but something I do want to bring up is that you don't really seem comfortable using the Wiggler in general, just by how you approach certain turns and how you maneuver in sticky situations. I think your driving could use a bit of work as well, so maybe trying out Scooty wouldn't be a bad idea, at least temporarily. Just a thought. If you like using Wiggler, keep using it. I'm just relaying what I've noticed. This mainly applies to lap 2, but I think you should start getting more comfortable with taking the first shortcut on the anti-gravity section. Besides, I'm not even sure what led to you going around on lap 2. I suppose either trying to get 2 more coins or to avoid a potential greenback on the shortcut, which isn't all that likely. But yeah, you went wide for 2 coins, got hit, so altogether you lost 1. I don't think you needed the coins, since there are a couple coins that were coming up that you could collect to up your coin count without putting yourself at risk. At the very least, I think you should have checked what was behind you before going wide. You could have picked up on the greens because they did come from 8th, which makes sense, and thus you could have taken the shortcut and been in a much safer situation. So putting it all together, you didn't really need the coins, there was a good chance the guy wouldn't back his green on the shortcut, and you could have used your rear view before committing to going wide. Alright, I know you got 2 items here, but getting 2 items was really lucky in this scenario. You had 2 people pretty close to you when you were aiming for the doubles here, and thank goodness it was only one of them who didn't stop because you didn't stop either. One way or another, the fact that you were able to snag the doubles is still beyond me, but the fact of the matter is that these close calls aren't always going to go in your favor. So I think you should have stopped and been patient like the guy in front of you was, since they went to take the doubles when you were right in front of them. A, you would have been pretty much guaranteed a double box, and B, you'd have a much better chance at securing a really good item like a star since you went from 9th to 8th literally right after taking the doubles. The only thing you'd have to worry about is people behind you coming up and snagging the doubles from you, but as long as you're using your rear view before committing, you should be good to go. So next time, stop and be patient when looking for doubles in bottom spots. Alright, whether you took the first cut or not, you probably would have been screwed by the bomb. It's a good bomb spot, and honestly, in most cases, I'd probably use my items where you did too. But maybe we're both thinking wrongfully here. Maybe you should have held your last shroom for a lot longer than you did, protecting your star from a ghost, and if you needed to use your star to avoid getting hit like you would need to here, you could activate it right then and there and be Givin'er. It's a very specific thing, I know, but I think holding items, specifically invincibility items, has a lot of benefits. Hopefully, this new perspective sheds light on how beneficial it is to hold items, since it's a game changer. Doing so potentially could have prevented you from getting screwed over at the very end. You never know, which is what makes this game so interesting to analyze. Lastly, we have Electrodrome. A couple of unlucky situations went down for Awoken this race, but it is what it is. We still got a few things to talk about though, so let's start giving it right about now, bud. This is a very light point. However, if you are looking for an item at the first set, you should almost always aim for a wide one if you don't plan on bagging. Especially since you aimed for one of the wider boxes, it was inevitable that you would drive through one before you could get an item. So next time, if you're starting in the back, if you want an item and you don't plan on bagging, aim for one of the wider boxes. It should pay off for you as long as the boxes aren't too close together to the point where people in the middle are going for the wide boxes. This is another small thing, but it's actually a pretty big thing if it's common. If you go for coins, make sure you actually collect them. It would have been a lot better had you taken the shortcut over going for coins since you didn't really bag and were only focused on catching up. Again, just a small thing, but next time if you go for coins, don't get complacent and ensure you actually collect most of them at the very least. Now this is an interesting topic. In most cases, I would say throw blue right away because you make up 50% of your team, but Electrodrome can be a running track, and holding blue was enough to secure your mate's spot for as long as possible, and he went on to get first. I'm just not really sure what the play is with blues because there's always a good chance that your mate could have been taken out at a bad time while you're stuck in the back holding blue. Next thing you know, both of you are getting a bad spot. Quite frankly, the shock was the best thing to happen for your team. Had it been slightly later, it would have secured no second blue thrown, but since there was no second blue anyways, let's not worry about that. But in most cases, I feel like if you pull blue, you should have your opponent drop out of first before the blue, then throw it. It's a really tough situation, but in Mogi, being in first and actually keeping first, blue or not, will always be up in the air. And that's even with people being hesitant to attack first because of the blue shell possibility. Either way, it's a team effort, but an individual holding blue is half the team holding blue. It's a coin toss since if your mate doesn't get a good spot, holding blue wasn't worth it. If he does get a good spot, holding blue is worth it. It depends on the track in most cases, which is why I'm going so in-depth on Electrodrome, since I see this track as a balanced track. After the shock, the rest of the race involved you trying to catch up with shrooms, so I don't have much else to talk about. However, I suppose I'll bring this weird situation up to confirm that you shouldn't worry about the guy respawning and backing up for a double, because in almost all cases, you nail the doubles. I feel like this is a very rare scenario, but if you can see any opponent backing up or are around the doubles in any way, just keep an eye on them. Either slow down, go for a single box, or commit because you're certain you can nail the doubles. Again, you did not do anything wrong here. I would have had the doubles taken from me as well, so keep on giving her the whole way through. You still finished in 6th place, which is pretty solid considering you held the blue for a good chunk of the race and missed a very important double box. I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you'd like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As for Awoken, I tried to include as many big things for you to work on as possible rather than the little things, but either way, I hope you learned something. I think your first steps toward improvement would be to consider taking the top path on Bow Dry Dunes on laps 1 and 2, consider holding power items to protect yourself when you really need to, and consider the risk and reward factor with blue shells depending on the track and the situation in the front. A lot of consideration, I know, but combined with my other talking points, I hope this video helped, and I wish you the best of luck moving forward. But until next time, thank you so much for watching, have yourselves a fantastic day, and keep on giving her, bud.